Hey, welcome back to Panic Butter. This is Tony. Thanks for joining me. Hey, I got a great one put together for you today. We're going to take a look at what is up in the sky. Where is it? Is it real? What do you think? Give me your thoughts and let me know. Sit back. Get ready. Here we go. First up. So, if somebody says, hey, I saw a UFO today, right now, outside, what do? Do you go look? Or do you do something else?
The government literally
use that on your toast. I promise you that's going to be 100% more helpful than aliens at this point. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, buddy. What do you think about that? That sounds pretty normal, huh? Everyday stuff. Unlike this. Up next.
Mr. Elizondo, what is your last position with the federal government?
Sir, I was the Director of National Program Special Management Staff, managing a White House Special Access Program on behalf of the National Security Council.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
Are there classified Department of Defense materials related to UAPs that you believe could be safely disclosed to the public without compromising national security?
Yes, sir, I do. I would never, ever try to endorse providing some sort of information that could compromise what we call a blue force technology or capability. But I do believe there's a lot of information regarding this topic, and I've been very vocal about it, that should be shared not only with the public, but most importantly, with members of Congress.
Are you familiar with my friend David Grush?
Absolutely, sir. I had the privilege and honor of working with him myself several years ago at U.S. Space Force.
Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that, and a lot of people are frustrated with those kind of answers, but we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against. You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as a singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
Sir, that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets in order to discredit this topic. I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again. And it turns out that that individual was also working with former leadership of Arrow at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year. Admiral Gallaudet, you mentioned in your opening statement on an email you received from the operations officer of the Fleet Forces Command regarding unknown objects almost colliding with U.S. military planes. Did anyone respond with knowledge of what the objects were?
I received no response, sir.
Did the exercise get canceled?
The exercise did not get canceled.
Why do you think the commander of Fleet Forces operations officer never discussed the incident again?
Sir, I'm speculating because I didn't have an exchange with him, but I believed it to be part of a special access program, the information and the video, which we have known now it was, and he realized he couldn't share that openly with the recipients of the email, and therefore the email was pulled from everybody's account.
Again, tell us what happened to the email from the commander of Fleet Forces.
The day after I received it, and all the other recipients received it, which were all the subordinate commanders of U.S. Fleet Forces, so 1- and 2-star admirals, including strike group commanders, the email was wiped or deleted from our accounts. Okay. And then no one talked about it.
All right. Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
How would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of and technology-wise could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
Well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater. So I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Have you experienced any experience with the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARROW?
Yes, Congressman, as I mentioned previously, I have met with them.
Okay. You heard Mr. Elizondo describe psychological operations for those contacting the Department of Defense about UAPs. You mentioned a similar influence operation by ARROW. Why are federal agencies invested in running information operations about UAPs if they do not exist?
Yes, sir. But I'll make a statement on ARROW's behalf. They have new leadership. The office has reached out to me to meet again, and I take that as a good faith effort, and we'll see where that goes.
Thank you, Chair Lady Everett. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tennessee. I would now like to recognize Mr. Higgins.
Yeah, that's what the government says. But you know how it is. Everyday people. What do they say? Like this.
Does anybody else wonder if maybe the government had told the aliens they were going to announce to everybody that they existed, and the aliens were getting all prepared and they had like some giant reveal plan and they were going to do something, and then collectively society just went, whatever, we don't really care that there's aliens and that we know about them and that they live in the oceans. And so now the aliens are just sort of like, well, what do we do with all these balloons? I mean, this is such a letdown. And now they're just going to start showing up all the time for no reason and just probing things and doing stuff just because, you don't care? You don't care that we're real? Oh, you don't care that we're real? What are you going to care now? We're going to make you care. Come, go, get in the ocean. See what happens. Guys, I think we should have probably at least been like, what? No, or something. Because I just have a feeling they're going to be real pissed.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Or the stuff that's coming up now. You see this all the time. It's happening all over.
What's up, guys? Jake here. Last week, I posted a video called Chinese Space Station Exposed. In that video, I showed you guys that China now has a fake space station and they are producing some terrible, low-quality fake space videos. Now, it didn't take long for the comments section to fill up with a bunch of people pointing out the exact same anomaly over and over again. And when I went back and looked at it, it's a perfect example of space fakery. Now, I want us to all take a close look at this scene. Here we see a Chinese astronaut strapped to the wall, pretending to be floating around in outer space in zero gravity. Now, what everyone seemed to notice, and I missed the first time I watched this video, was these bags off to the right. You see these bags over here, these objects? Why aren't they floating? Are they glued down? Are they tied down? Seems to me that these objects over here, whatever they are, should be floating around, right? Now, the strangest thing I found, and I had to look real close, is at the end of that white rope tie, or whatever it is, on that blue bag, you can see a CGI glitch that happens. Some sort of weird CGI glitch anomaly happens at the end of that white rope tie, and I can't make any other sense of it other than it being some sort of editing mistake, some sort of CGI glitch editing mistake that they were just too lazy to go back and fix. It seems they don't care if their stuff looks low quality. They don't care if their stuff looks fake as funk. That's because people are so damn indoctrinated and brainwashed, they will believe anything. But for those of us still paying attention, CGI glitch and the logical matter of the fact that these bags aren't floating away is 100% a perfect debunk of this chintzy, chinky, fake space station. This has been just another opinion from Jake the Asshole. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see all you lovely assholes next time. Peace.
Yeah, I can probably pick apart all the videos and find a lot wrong. But hey, why do that when you can listen to this?
Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred, and I will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. I believe that America's greatness depends on three elements. A watchful Congress, B, a responsive executive branch, and C, an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong. To fix these problems, I propose three principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection, and for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. In closing, we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on it, whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon. We don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency. And this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we, as Americans, have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe the world deserves the truth. Thank you, esteemed members of Congress, for your time today. It is profoundly appreciated by many.
Yep, telling it how it is, right now. But what happens when stuff like this up next happens?
This video surfaced online back in 2014. The entire scene was caught on Officer Joe Hall's dash cam as he pulled over a driver for an unsafe lane change. Per standard protocol, Hall approached the vehicle and asked the driver for his license and registration. According to the driver, as he reached over to provide the documentation to the officer, he noticed a bright light in the distance. When all of a sudden, it was as if the officer began to melt and suddenly vanished right in front of his eyes. The driver immediately fled the scene and called 911 from his cell phone. When the police caught up to the driver, he was detained and questioned. However, when this dashcam footage surfaced, the driver was free to go. This is truly one of those incidences where you'll have to see it to believe it. What do you think really happened here?
Yeah, the police didn't have a good night there, and they didn't also have a good time in this next one. Here we go.
Okay, so you guys stay out there. I'm just going to check the closets. Okay. 2314, be advised I just got flagged down by a resident here of a home that I'm in, 3251 North 39th Street, states there is a creature in the closet. I'll be checking it out. Send me another unit of them. Don't come out. Do not come out. Please. I need another unit over here on 39th Street, 03.
Yeah, would you want to run into that? I'm thinking not. Also, what about this? This is current. This is now. Here we go.
On November 28th, 2024, at Manchester Airport, a pilot performing pre-flight checks noticed something unusual. A metallic blue, sphere-like orb hovering 200 feet above the tarmac. The object was silent, motionless, and reflected light off its polished surface. Moments later, the orb dropped rapidly, stopping just inches above the ground. It hovered there for nearly 20 seconds, allowing the pilot to capture several photos while nearby personnel watched in disbelief. The sphere emitted no sound or visible energy, but seemed to radiate a faint, unnatural presence. Then, without warning, it glowed faintly and shot back into the sky at an incredible speed, disappearing in seconds. Witnesses were left stunned, unable to explain the sudden and unworldly event.
Yeah, it's pretty strange, huh? But, as you know, there's more. There is just no answers yet. Here we go.
There is a strange spherical object that positions itself dangerously on a landing strip for commercial flights at a busy airport on the European continent. Recently, the object is being observed by a group of pilots from the cockpit of an aircraft when they were close to the event. At the moment they noticed a spherical orb that remained suspended on the runway, reporting the event to the control tower and managing to capture some photographs, an incident that recently happened at Manchester International Airport in the United Kingdom. We are UFO 5537. According to the testimony of one of the pilots, identified as Captain Bicalo, an operations vehicle sent by the control tower approached the object, where he made a plus with movement and then shot into the sky. In the images, the target remained positioned briefly in the skies and then disappeared through the clouds. In the images we are witnessing a small spherical object, cobalt or grayish blue, which approached dangerously to the maneuver views inside the International Airport of the City of Manchester on the afternoon of November 27, 2024. More and more of us are people who look up to the skies and become aware of events. We're Group 5537. We tell you about ecological events at a universal level and in Ave Hispana. Follow us for more content. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, pretty strange, huh? What do you think? And equally as strange as this right here. Here we go.
Look! You need to get the boy! Did the kids come out to look? Did you see it? Oh, when it was over here, it looked so crazy. It looked like it's on fire. I don't think that's it. That's not coming from over there. That's the noise. What the hell? Look at it, boy. Look at it. They really just made a hole. Look at it. That don't even look normal. It really looks like a hole in it. It's like it turned into a spirit.
Yeah, just the strange. And you knew it. There's more. Always is. Here we go.
You see it? Yes. You see it?
We need to evacuate. Can we evacuate?
Why? Where are we going?
California.
Oh no. That's not the place you want to evacuate.
Yeah, that's always cool, huh? Always. And here we go. Something next. Information overload.
I'm going to tell you a story about humanity. And like any good story, we need to start at the beginning. A lot of people want to know what the beginning was like for humanity. So after channeling for 40 years, the information has often been asked, where did we come from? The way the story goes from the information gathered from the channeling is as follows. Many hundreds of thousands of years ago, the natural hominid that evolved upon the earth, that we often refer to as Homo erectus, existed, and at one point, the story goes, an extraterrestrial race visited the earth. They came to Earth to mine minerals that would help them create a balance on their planet. And in taking on this task, they began to realize that it was quite daunting and would take a long time, longer than they had. It was very important to balance out the weather on their planet, with the minerals for a very, very short period of time. And so they needed help in order to do this. They began to look around and saw the natural hominids that had evolved here, who were close enough physically to the extraterrestrials that they thought perhaps if we can somehow train them to be of assistance in mining these minerals, the task will go faster. But being master geneticists, they felt that a way to accomplish this would be to take their own genetics and inject them into the hominids and create them to be a little bit more like the extraterrestrial race so they would be easier to train, so that they would be able to understand what the task was all about and help the extraterrestrials, who were called the Anu, or the Anunnaki. So they undertook a program of genetic alteration where they introduced their own genetics into Homo erectus and other early hominids and began to create what became us, Homo sapiens. A lot of people talk about the idea of evolution, and they talk about the idea of thinking that there must have been a kind of missing link between early hominids and Homo sapiens, because there seems to be an evolutionary jump that occurred where suddenly we gained much more brain power, much more brain capacity. And it hasn't yet been fully satisfactorily explained how that occurred. It may be possible that this so-called missing link is actually the extraterrestrials that came to Earth so long ago and injected their DNA into the early hominid in order to create Homo sapiens. As humans were created, then they began to act as a workforce to help accelerate the mining operations that were so important to the ETs and allowed them to accomplish their task within a timely manner. However, the idea is that because the ETs were so advanced, these early humans began to kind of look upon them as godlike beings, and they began to think of them as something far above humanity. Also, the ETs may have acted to keep the humans at a certain level. In many of the stories that exist in early documents, such as the Bible, these stories are told, but they have been sort of mythologized. And I think they do represent something a little bit more literal. When it talks about the idea, such as the Garden of Eden, and how the gods did not want humans to be as smart as they are, to know the things that they knew, and how eating from the tree of knowledge caused them to be expelled from the Garden of Eden, so to speak. This may be a metaphor for what actually happened in terms of humans seeing the gods and wanting to understand what the gods knew, what the ETs knew. But the ETs wanted to prevent that, because then they would be like them and they would know the things they knew, and they couldn't necessarily use them as labor anymore. They would want independence, as any thinking being probably does. So they curtailed their knowledge. They curtailed their ability perhaps even to learn that knowledge by not necessarily turning on certain markers in our DNA, and by leaving those markers off, preventing us from actually being able to learn too much of what the ETs knew and how they operated, so that we wouldn't become equal to them. So the idea is that eventually the extraterrestrials on the planet that these beings came from may have in fact learned about what these ETs had done in creating Homo sapiens. Now, as far as the story goes, it's possible that they have breached their own laws by doing this. It may not have been something that they were actually allowed to do in creating a sentient species. And so the story goes that they were recalled to their own planet, and that from that point forward, once Homo sapiens had been created, the ETs that had recalled the group that came to Earth knew that they couldn't just abandon mankind. They had to guide them from that point forward until they were assured that mankind could perhaps take care of themselves, could understand basic relationships and basic laws, and could create a society that was self-sustaining. And so the ETs sought to teach mankind things like agriculture and mathematics and so on, so that humankind could become self-sustaining. But I think this is where the stories come from, of visitations from the gods over time, to lead us on certain paths, to teach us certain things, to watch over us and guide us. And this relationship, I think, solidified the idea that eventually became the religions of the world, where we know that there is something observing us. We know that there is something higher than us. Now, this in no way, shape, or form negates the idea of the spiritual nature of God or the spiritual nature of humanity. But I think these things have become enmeshed. These two stories have become intertwined and enmeshed with one another. And therefore, there is nowadays no separation between the idea of God as a spirit and the souls of humanity and the idea of who created us. But I think these are actually two distinctly different stories. While we do have a spiritual beginning, I think we also have a different physical beginning that began, as this story tells us, with the ETs that came to Earth and created Homo sapiens. But they have stayed around to guide us after recalling the group that created us, being that creation was against their laws. So in guiding us, we now have all the stories of being led through the desert, of being taught how to build certain devices, how to create societies, how to have relationships. And this comes across, because the stories have been intertwined, as things like commandments from God, which I think in the early days was simply teaching humanity ways to live, ways to understand how not to fight each other and so on and so forth, how to get along, so that they knew that they could eventually leave us to our own devices and that we could build societies that would one day allow us to sort of reclaim our position among the stars, being the children of extraterrestrial beings.
That's pretty deep, huh? That could be a serious brain cramp, depending on how far you go. But let's go to the past.
Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond. Moments pass and the oversight is picked up on by the clandestine third party, who quickly prompts them with, "Talk." Immediately, Neil Armstrong speaks.
Apollo 11, Houston, go call says DPD, let's put right, over. Okay.
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private. Until now. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
All right, Daniel, we just wanted an area such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we were saying. Thank you very much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we cut out the sun coming in from the other spacecraft, so looking through the number one window, there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Hi, Roger. Houston, Apollo 11. Coming in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with a TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
Yeah. The white bands, major spots across the Earth.
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up, and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. It thus confirms that the stumbling block to their success was the lethal radiation of the Van Allen radiation belts. Since the same equipment was used on the subsequent missions in the 40 months that followed, none of them could have gone to the moon. They only increased their proficiency at staging them. When some TV viewers of the second manned mission to the moon telephoned the networks complaining that reruns of I Love Lucy were being interrupted, it became clear that for the taxpayers, once was enough. But it wasn't enough for the government and contractors. Billions of dollars of pure profit went with each return. How coincidental that the following mission would have the element of life and death jeopardy. Apollo 13. Now the public would take going to the moon more seriously and be reconnected with the drama. We now realize that perhaps the reason Neil Armstrong has never given an on-camera interview is because he doesn't want to lie anymore. What threats may have been made upon such honorable men or their families to possess their reluctant cooperation and later ill feelings towards perpetuating this still darkened hour in American history? NASA's highest-ranking official, James Webb, resigned without explanation just days before the first Apollo mission. Why, when he was on the threshold of achieving the greatest accomplishment of his career?
Oh yeah. Well, there you have it. If you made it this far, thanks. Hit that subscribe button, join me, and you'll be right back at the beginning next time. Have a good evening.